Guys, how long does it take to get jacked?
Get real jacked, I think it takes a really long time.
Yeah, I agree.
How about just jacked enough where people are like, oh, you're jacked. Like just like noticeably jacked.
Like you've been lifting maybe about 3 years. Where someone's like, oh yeah, I could tell that you lift. They see it in your traps and your neck and your arms maybe.
2 to 3 years. Depends on, again, on how much effort you're putting into your training.
So yeah, this is a video from Hamza. We did one before, but this one seems pretty interesting. So let's get it.
Jeffrey looks into his dirty mirror and he is disgusted with his body. How do I get rid of this? He says while he grabs onto his lower belly fat. But Jeffrey, you've only been going to the gym for a couple of weeks. Have patience.
How many years have you been lifting now, Obi?
It's well over a decade.
And Mark, you're like 33 years in.
Yeah. Yep.
Picture this.
Yeah.
I'm a 16-year-old skinny fat brown kid and I've just really gotten horny. I'm in high school and totally noticing the girls around me and I want to actually start to date. But I look into the mirror and I don't feel attractive, particularly because I had grown up quite skinny for most of my life, and yet at this point I'd been eating the school lunches, the fucking disgusting Western diet, literally just eating like carbs and bread and shit, pizzas and fucking whatever. Why do they feed that shit to kids, bro?
Obi, since you're from the UK,
Yeah.
what kind of stuff did you eat?
You did have the option of junk food, but it was actually quite balanced. But obviously, when we were 12, 13, 14, you'd always go for the chips and the burgers. In the UK, we have this thing where chips and burgers for students was like £2. And buy
That's
that.
not weight, it's the price.
Yeah. two sterling, GB sterling.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
And you're trying to say that it's inexpensive.
Yes.
And by
cheap.
chips, you mean French fries.
Oh yeah. Oh right. Yes.
We're gonna have the translation under the screen.
The kids would obviously go for the option of, you know, chips and fried chips. I did too in school. So he is right. In school, I ate most of the junk and usually the cake and the custard after, and I used to go for seconds.
So I've been working out now for many years, honestly, like about 8 years, 9 years. If you work out hard for like 9 years, you can be way bigger, way more muscular than me. Honestly, for the first like 5 years of my training, even though I was really into it, I just wasn't very disciplined. So I was just working out like a pussy. Like I'd get to like, for example, if I had, 10 reps, really did have 10 reps in the bank, I'd get to 6, fuel the burn and stuff, and I'd just put the weights down and just like go on my phone for a bit.
This is like after years of lifting, and I'm sure I lifted like a pussy in the beginning. I blocked that out. I don't remember it. But I kind of feel like when you get to those reps and those sets and it gets to be kind of painful, oftentimes I remind myself, this is exactly where I need to be. This is right where I need to be. How do you view that when you're training?
I was training to failure a lot. I didn't know it was called training to failure. That's kind of what I did. Yeah.
Like pushing pretty far past.
Pushing past, if it was 12 reps, I will push past that to just get that extra 2. I loved drop sets and supersets, just feeling that burn. And I did so many supersets, so many drop sets. I still do now. For me, when you get to that pain, I loved that. So, some people, like he said, once he got to that 6, he will stop. No, I will be like, no, 7, 8. And there were times where I'll put the weight down and be like, no, pick it up and go again.
Yeah.
So for me, that's kind of what I trained for. That meant I was working hard. But obviously now we're learning that you don't have to do that all the time. You don't have to push yourself so much in that way. For me, it was just like lifting weights, training and going out all the time. And having fun and showing off the hard work, going to the nightclub with your, button all the way down to your, because that's what we did it for. We all try and pretend we weren't trying to get jacked to be attractive to everyone else and show off, but that's what we did it for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing that I sometimes wonder is like, with all this information on training that's come up the past years because of YouTube, people talk about all the smarter ways to train and staying away from failure often. But when I think back to when I was younger and when I put on a lot of my initial size, like there were days that I had a dumbbell set at home, but then there's also a gym I would go to. So I would use the dumbbell set at home in the morning, go to school, come back home. Then a few hours later, I'd walk to the gym and go train. And that was just what I did because I was a kid with no time. And I wonder like, maybe there's a good thing to just overdoing it for a period of time.
Look at your
when
legs.
You can.
Your legs are huge, and they used to even be bigger. And a lot of that has to do with overtraining and soccer and now jiu-jitsu. But it's like there's a lot of attention that was paid to training your legs and a lot of running in soccer, right?
Absolutely. So I think sometimes if you got the time as a kid and you ain't doing shit, Just
Overdo it.
Overdo it. Overtrain.
If you're on this right now and you're wondering, how long does it take to get jacked? And, without taking anything, it's hard to say because honestly, it changes very much between people. I have been totally a guy who says, don't think about genetics and stuff, but at least for this, let's just talk, right? I'm not saying that you should be sat here and upset saying your genetics are bad, because either way, you're going to get to the same point. But I have actually seen in my own eyes some people who have got seemingly good genetics or testosterone, whatever it is, and they make progress incredibly fast. I'm talking literally 6 months of a guy with pretty good genetics. He builds a more attractive physique than a guy who's put it in 3 years. I found this interesting thing once that the gene variance in Africa is actually the biggest even in every country. So a person from Nigeria is genetically more different than a person from Kenya or something like this than literally someone from Israel is to someone from America. It's the biggest gene diversity is in Africa. That's why you see the full on elite athletes.
Surrounded by superheroes right now.
Any thoughts, guys?
Hey, what tribe are you from, though?
I'm Igbo.
You're Igbo? I'm a Bibio.
What's that?
Ibibio? Ibibio? If you Google it real quick.
Wow. Is that the
it's a little
extreme
bit
version of Igbo?
By around 2 to 3 years, you should be that muscular guy. 2 to 3 years. If you're not seen as the muscular guy, if you don't have a good amount of muscle where people are whoa, if you're flexing, someone will be whoa, it means you've been doing something totally wrong. And you need to accept this. I found that bodybuilding is such a beautiful journey because if you've been bullshitting yourself, it will show. Your rate of muscle growth is your own personal journey.
He's talking about looking good, and I think the words would be just looking better. You should, you know what I'm saying? Because each person's coming from a different thing.
Exactly.
So you should be looking better and better and better over time.
Yeah.
I know that's what he probably means, but I'm just trying to clarify.
Food. I wish someone sat down and said, you do realize this shit food, this sugar and stuff that you're eating, it's just going to gain body fat and no muscle at all. Why don't you just go and eat chicken and rice every day? You need to figure out what's holding you back.
I don't think he would have listened to that information. Maybe not him personally, maybe he would have.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of individuals wouldn't listen to the information. And I think it's because I think that you have to go through the journey. And I also think that you have to make yourself into something before you can make bolder decisions in the right direction. So the stronger and better that you feel about yourself, the more confident you feel about yourself, the more confident you are in saying, I'm not fucking going out. Because when you're going out and eating pizza with your friends and going to nightclubs and doing drugs and stuff, that's you trying to get accepted into something else.
Yeah.
Whereas you would be like, I don't need that. But you kind of already have to be somebody to be a person that's going to say, I ain't doing that because I got jujitsu practice tomorrow. I'm not doing that because I got to run tomorrow morning.
I agree because we're all teenagers, right? 18, 19 is when you're in university. You want to impress your friends. And I got that when I was in my 20s, when I was doing shows and everyone saying, you need to get a life, eating chicken and rice and not going out and not drinking. Imagine if you're 18 and 19 saying that. You wouldn't have any friends because you'll be seen as uncool. So you're right. If someone did tell him that, he wouldn't have listened. Most teenagers wouldn't. If someone told me not to play video games and eat rice and chicken and not the pizza and ice cream that I was eating all the time, I would never listen anyway. I thought you were crazy because that was what I enjoyed.
So if a younger person is listening to this, let's say that you're like, but all my friends already do that. They drink, they're not paying attention to all that shit. That's when you might want to try to find a different group of people. If you can, put yourself in a setting, get yourself in a super training gym's free. So you can find some people here or anywhere where people are kind of doing the things that you'd like to do and emulate. Because if you're around those people, you're going to get better just by the law of being around those types of people. So it makes a difference.
Power Project family, how's it going? Now, we talk all about strength on this channel, but strength starts from the feet. That's why we've partnered with Vivo Barefoot shoes for over a year now. Now, Vivo Barefoot, unlike most shoes, number one, they look great, but number two, they're flexible. They're zero drop and they have a wide toe box. If you wear these shoes over time, your feet will get stronger. Now, if you guys want to get some of these shoes, head to vivobarefoot.com/powerproject. Use code POWERVIVO20 at checkout to save 20% off your entire order. Enjoy this clip.
There's two big mistakes that I made that honestly have slowed my progress down by about 2 to 3 years, and it probably is doing it to you because no one actually made this so clear to me. Number one, cutting too much, losing too much body weight, and wanting to be on a calorie deficit, wanting to be lean. To begin with, you need to bulk. It's the whole point of bodybuilding, of building muscle, is that you should bulk. You should eat more calories, good calories, not bullshit.
You mentioned that on the podcast that we just did.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think a lot of people, I still get questions about that. How do I get bigger but I want to still have six-pack abs? And I'm just like, do you want the good news or the bad news or even worse news? Because they see me and sometimes I go, I put on some weight, but I still have some abs. And they're like, but I'm like, yeah, I've been training for 10 years. I've gone through that bulking phase of I didn't have abs.
Yeah.
I had to eat, consume the calories. Like you said, not junk, because I made that mistake when I first started to bulk of just junk food constantly. And now I wouldn't do that. It's just finding the balance. Everyone wants to lean bulk. That's the word. If you're a hard gainer, if you're naturally slim, lean bulking is, I don't know how to explain this, but it's just counterproductive. You're fighting against yourself. You're trying to stay shredded, but you're trying to add weight, but you're naturally slim. How does that make
You need
sense?
an amount of calorie surplus that is registering in you, probably gaining at least a little bit of body fat.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I mean, it just happens. But I think a lot of people are scared to gain that extra fat, right? Because everyone wants to be beach body ready, as they said. Social media was starting to take off. I didn't have to post Instagram pictures because Instagram wasn't around till later on. I didn't have that pressure of selfies and aesthetic pictures, and I wasn't vlogging, so I could cover up my my non six pack. Stomach. I could hide that. I can hide all of that and just bulked.
What about the cutting too much?
Yeah, I remember when I was in high school. It was when I was 16 because I was trying to cut because I got really heavy. So I went on this 1,000-calorie diet for and on week 2, I almost fainted in class. Because I was like, oh, okay, this diet's a little bit too hard.
And what did you weigh at 16?
I was 220.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was because I was only lifting. But when I started playing soccer again, the soccer helped me drop body fat and whatever. But even as I got older, there were phases where I was like, I need to gain muscle, so I just had to let myself gain weight. I had to let the body fat come on.
Yeah.
I couldn't have all the veins I usually had. You have to be okay with having some body fat. But that's why now I can maintain this weight perpetually, because I did have the time of bulking and being bigger. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to have this.
I wasted so many years of my life just trying to get lean before I even had the muscle to really show it off. But actually, the worst mistake that I made, even just recently, even for the most of the last year, is such a silly one that no one really spoke about because all these dickhead fitness YouTubers have been doing it wrong. I was training like a weightlifter, like a power lifter, instead of a bodybuilder. Every fitness YouTuber video you've seen says the same thing, don't they? Every single one of them just a fucking copy paste, don't they? Oh, heavy compound lifts. Bodybuilders don't do that shit, bro. All these dickhead fitness YouTubers telling you heavy compound, oh, don't do isolation exercise. Why would you waste your time doing curls? Because you want to build biceps.
How do you feel about this, Obi?
I used to get a lot of questions going, you never lift heavy. Why don't you ever lift heavy? Why don't you, what's your 1 rep max squats, deadlift, bench? And it got to the point, I do this now, the past 2-3 years, when someone asks me, I'm like, I have no idea. Even if I know, I don't tell people.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times when people ask me this, I'm like, well, why do you want to know this information? How does this change? How does this change your training? How does this change what you do? But a lot of times guys ask you this because they want to feel good about themselves. Because, if you go, oh, my biggest bench is, I don't know, 100 kilos, they'll be like, oh, yeah, well, I can bench 115. I'm like, well, cool, but my chest is bigger than you. So
and then you're like, I don't know, I never tried it. Let me try it. And you try it and you could probably do it. That's the other thing.
It's just for me, it's like I was bodybuilding. So for me, I'm trying to build muscle, not be the strongest in the gym. But, he's right. A lot of the, videos nowadays is everyone trying to bench ridiculous numbers and lift ridiculous numbers. And, some people say to me, you don't really squat that heavy. I've noticed you don't squat that heavy. And I'm like, cool, but my legs are bigger than yours. And that's what I want. I want to build muscle. I'm training to build muscle. I do a lot of tempo training.
Yeah.
So I always have a joke about my training looks so boring. It's not glamorous because it's tempo work. My goal is to change people's perception of strength in terms of fitness and how they approach fitness. And also with training, stop looking at it as bench press, deadlifts, and squats. Yes, those are fundamentals, but every time you see someone's workout program, 9 out of 10 will be bench, squats, deadlift, and maybe bicep curls will be primary, and then they'll put the other stuff as, we'll do that afterwards.
Accessory movements.
Trying to change people's perception of how they should lift is probably one of the hardest when 90% of fitness advice is telling them the opposite. That's what I found anyway.
What you want, if you watch this video, is hypertrophy. What you want is just muscle gain, right? Muscle gain is very little and just low ROI. If you're doing heavy sets of like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, even 8 reps. You know, you've always heard like the rep ranges, 1 to 5 is like strength and shit, 8 is hypertrophy, bro. I found you'll get the best gains of your life if you do more than 10 reps. 10 to like 15, 10 to 20 is the best range for building muscle because it's light enough that you really get the fucking good squeeze.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that rep range dichotomy?
He's right in terms of the rep rate. That's why I said the 5 reps, because that's so notorious that everyone just 5 reps, 5 reps.
That's how you get big.
Yeah. When I was doing volume, it was, 12 to 15.
Yeah.
But I was doing crazy volume sometimes. Like I said, drop sets, super sets, quadruple sets. In terms of injuries, yes, a lot of us get injuries a lot of times when we are doing heavy lifting with bad form. It's just true. If you're doing 15 reps, you're less likely to be injured because the weight's not going to be heavy enough anyway. I think you need to find the balance of some low volume and some high volume. Going from one extreme to the other isn't necessarily also a good thing because some people, if you say to people, do 15 reps, they wouldn't, again, have that knowledge of, okay, if I'm doing more than 15, I need to probably go up a weight. So they will just keep doing lightweight and then do that for a year and nothing happens.
Yeah.
Making sure that you learn to track your numbers and also increase the weight. I always say when I used to train clients and when I do my videos, I say to people, even if it's 1 kilo heavier, that's still something. Also, progressive overload.
Yeah.
That's one of the most important aspects that I think a lot of newbies don't learn until it's 2-3 years into the training, and then they say, oh, anyone who's bigger than them, it can't be possible because I've been training for 2 years and I'm not as big as this person, you know, which is usually what you get because they don't get the results.
There's an aspect of this progressive overload though that I think like would be really beneficial for the person who, let's say you've been doing 10 to 15 forever and you're like, I want to start improving other things. If you start to do 5s, if you start to do heavier training here and there, the one thing I think you should keep in mind is when you do heavier lifts, those heavier lifts should look like your lighter lifts.
Yes.
Because if they're heavier, right, but they're, like you mentioned, tempo, you're controlling the tempo and then you're done at 5 and then you put it back, right? You're not going to injure yourself because that was obviously a load that you have control over. But what happens when guys start to lift heavier is they get excited.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good. I think it was Ed Cohn, who you always mention, has said that if you a heavy single should not look that difficult. It should look like when you were doing reps. It might be slower, but the control and the form of that movement should still look good. And if it doesn't, you're not using a load that you can actually use responsibly.
Yeah.
If I could go back now, I'd tell younger Hamza, you're a bodybuilder, not a weightlifter. Do not watch any of these dickheads online that are telling you heavy compound lifts. I tell them lift within the 10 to 20 rep range for every exercise, including compound. Like you should do some, big compound movements, squats and bench and stuff. That's still nice, of course, but don't do them for 3 reps. Don't do them. You don't need to increase your strength if you're a bodybuilder. It doesn't there's no need.
Yeah, I don't really agree with that. I think you should be strong just because, as well as if you're bodybuilding. And plus, there is no way you won't be getting stronger if you are periodizing and doing progressive overload.
Yeah.
There is no way. So I think, yes, you're not a power lifter, of course, but you should definitely still be somewhat strong when you do bodybuilding.
He's also talking about getting bigger. So
Right,
if you're going to
exactly.
get bigger, you're going to be stronger.
Today because you want to be like a mini bodybuilder. You don't want to be a massive steroid one, but you just want to build a good thing. You don't need to be strong for it. Because strength and muscle are 2 different things. There's been studies that show they are correlated. Yeah, of course they are. But correlation does not mean causation. Training in the 5 rep range is not going to build anywhere near as much muscle as training in the 10 to 15 rep range. Simple as that. How long does it take? About 2 to 5 years to be jacked.
Yeah, that was good. Guys, we just did a podcast with Obi also. It's on the channel and on all podcast platforms. Check it out. But Obi, where can people find you?
Instagram, Obi_Vincent. YouTube, Obi Vincent. TikTok, Obi Vincent.
Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later.